For this development stream, we've received an additional list of changes that are expected to be rolled out for Season 2. While I'm not going to be able to go over all of the item changes because it seems like they changed every single unique in the game, I am going to try to summarize the changes so you have a better understanding of what to expect walking into Season 2. The most important thing to note at this point, we got an official clarify from Senpai that with all the drastic changes that are going to be coming to the map system, people are going to need to ditch all of their maps before Season 2 is rolled out, because having old maps on your character will brick them, and these things are non-recoverable. The team's not going to help you get your pluggy installed character working again. So wait for the official announcement from the dev team on the subreddit and in the Discord server, but understand you're going to need to throw away your maps. Very important. Don't brick your character because you're trying to hold on to that one tier 3 you've been too afraid to run. So like I said, a lot of unique items in the game have been reworked in some way, either having their lower numbers bumped up a little bit to help with power scale, or having some of their mechanisms changed so that they're more viable in the current meta. There are a lot of items where they're just trying to fulfill a niche that they otherwise tried to, but failed to actually serve, where rune words were so much more often the replacement. An example of this would be something like Stormspire, which now has a chance to cast static on striking, meaning at least for lightning elemental builds, you have an alternative to infinity for your mercenary to use. Other items like Gargoyle's Bite and Viper Fork have also seen a boost to their plus to poison skills, meaning on those interesting builds, you know, like a poison Blade Fury assassin or something like a Viper Fork Rabies Druid, you're going to see a bit more viability to something like Twitch Throw now has additional increased attack speed on it. Iratha's gloves now come along with plus Pierce on them to make early game Pierce a viability for Amazon. The Athena's Scythe is going to have more plus to skills and have higher rolls on plus to skills so that your hybrid druid summoners or just your flat summoners are going to be able to use that for longer as well. And then something like the Magnus skin gloves are going to roll with plus 20% Pierce. Again, just increasing the viable itemization pool for that mid-game power push. If you saw our recent attempt at building a Thorns Paladin, you know that we tried to use something like Stormspire and Storm Spike to offset the amount of damage that monsters were taking with some elemental damage. These two items have both seen a huge increase in their chance to cast potential, meaning 75% of the time they're going to proc. That's right, the build that I tried desperately to make work is now going to work 3 times as often, but that's going to be in Season 2. Thanks, Senpai! Excited to try that out again in the future. Also, in general, a lot of daggers have seen a bit of a rework considering that martial arts assassins are going to be able to use them for their builds now. So something like Ghost Flame, which previously used to give +2 fire skills, is now giving percentile elemental damage. You'll see this with some of the other daggers as well, where you see a buff to their poison skill output, and also some general reworking so that they're more usable as a melee attack weapon instead of just an interesting offhand with plus to skills. For all the people who thinks that Enigma got a little bit too shafted in PD2, they'll be happy to find out that the blink charges are actually going to replenish at a faster rate. Instead of the previous 8 seconds to replenish a blink charge, you're now going to be replenishing at 6 seconds. So you'll be able to teleport about 25% more of the time. I think it's a good direction for Enigma to go in. I don't think that Enigma needs to give straight O-skill teleport like it did in vanilla, but I am glad to see it see a little bit of additional use, because right now it's in an incredibly niche place. Probably one of the more exciting and unexpected changes is that the Grandfather is now going to be able to roll +4 to +6 to war cries. So if you want to do some napkin math, that does mean that dual wielding these bad boys is going to give you +12 to war cries, which is actually incredibly relevant. At least in the 99 push, you're going to need to have a bow barb, and the purpose of the bow barb was to have the highest possible plus to Warcry and plus to bow to maximize the benefit that the entirety of the team was seeing, because it scales with each individual that receives the buff. Having something like the Grandfather, which has a really respectable damage pool, means that we might see the bow barb not necessarily just there to bow and then vaguely disrupt with leap and Warcry, and we might actually be able to see a melee damage dealing hybrid between a frenzy barb and the initial stacking of buffs, meaning your barb may only go into battle command battle orders and then put the rest of their points into a viable melee build so that they can both have more interactivity while running maps, especially in the level 99 grind, but also actually increase the total damage output of your team, especially if you're running some kind of composition with an enchant sorceress. So something really quickly to note here, since Whirlwind is going to now proc Chance to Cast on striking, both Gavel of Pain and Cranium Basher have had their Repairs Durability mod removed from the base item. Senpai's reasoning for doing this is that if you want to be able to benefit from having a huge top-end damage ethereal weapon that is now also proccing amp damage for you, you're either going to need to use a non-eth version, relegate this just to your mercenary using it, or on something like the Whirlwind Barbarian, actually commit to socketing and putting a Zod rune into it at the very least to be able to benefit from the huge damage output that both of these weapons bring to the table. The Bul-Kathos Guardian Sword is now going to be rolling on a Colossus Sword, as opposed to previously where it was on a Mystical Sword. This is going to increase that top-end damage of the weapon again, and also the full set bonus has been buffed in pretty noticeable ways. So the fire damage is going to be buffed from the flat 20, which it used to give, up to a plus 200 fire damage, which is definitely nothing to sneeze at. And then in addition to that, there is a 25% chance of Crushing Blow and Deadly Strike, which is a huge buff to this set. And maybe you're going to see this as some early to mid-game Whirlwind setup or Frenzy setup on the Barbarian. These weapons are now in a much stronger place and actually viable, as opposed to only using the Bul-Kathos Ring. In addition to that, the Bul-Kathos Ring ED is going to roll a bit higher now. It has a better bottom value, as opposed to rolling over a greater range, just to see a general increase in power on that one piece item as well, in case you're one of the builds that is only using the ring. Now, here is the part of the changes that I'm so excited about, and I cannot stress this enough, or maybe I shouldn't. Honestly, maybe I should just let everybody sleep on these changes and pretend like they don't even exist, and then I'll rake in all the money as I'm crafting the best items in the game. And I mean that. Some of these are going to be the best items in the game, depending on what your role is. But we are finally getting a full layout of what the changes to crafting are going to be starting in Season 2. Now, some of the verbiage is wrong on some of these slides, so I am going to correct them where that is the case. And I'm also going to truncate anything down. So if it says, take this and replace it with something else, I'm basically just going to refer to the value that is there now, because I know none of y'all know about those other values anyways, and you don't care about them. The Hit Power crafting set is now really focused on giving faster hit recovery, additional defense, additional block rate, block chance, and then in addition to all of those, actually create some really competitive weapons. So I'm going to quickly go through the list. Your helmet is now going to have additional defense and 10 to 20% faster hit recovery, which is huge. Your boots are now going to have 10% faster hit recovery, which is really nice. That means you could double dip on these because one of the affixes that you could roll could also be hit recovery. Your hit power gloves, which were already extremely strong due to the knockback and incredibly viable on anything like a double throw bar or a boazon, is now also going to roll 10 to 20% ignore target defense. Let me spell out a pair of gloves that you can roll. These gloves could have +2 to bow and crossbow skills, plus 20% increased attack speed, plus 20% ignore target defense, and knockback, and dual res, and strength and dexterity. These gloves are going to be absolutely bonkers. In addition to that, you are able to craft these and get, +2 to martial arts, increased attack speed, minus target defense. The belt now also is able to roll with hit recovery, which is absolutely fantastic. Your hit power shield is now having an additional chance to block, so 10 to 20% chance to block, and 20 to 30% faster block rate. That is so big, especially on a necromancer in hardcore who's trying to get up to max block and survivability while also rolling staff mods to be able to increase their total power output, along with that +2 to necromancer. Your hit power body is now going to roll with up to an additional 50% enhanced defense, which is actually really nice, and then on top of that, 20 to 40% hit recovery. Oh, wow. That number is actually a bit too high, in my opinion, but it's fantastic that it's an option which is now available. Like we covered in the last video, the hit power amulet is now going to include a huge amount of attack rating, so 150 to 250, and then additional 10% faster hit recovery on the amulet, which is really going to help out those mid-game melee builds that need a little bit of an extra boost to be able to actually successfully hit, as well as be able to take a hit and recover more quickly. Hit power rings are going to be in a really interesting place, especially for anybody who needs to hit, because they're going to have a flat 10 to 15 bonus dex, which is more than double what you used to be able to roll on the ring, as well as 1 to 4 maximum damage as auto mods on the ring. These could then roll further with strength, dex, huge attack rating, huge minimum or maximum damage, all res, all those really good mods that you already know about. But I really think that people are not going to necessarily understand just how powerful a ring like this can be. You know, you're going to be crafting something like a Ravenfrost that could have more desirable mods as opposed to the more typical ones that you're seeing being used on builds, because there's kind of nothing better to use in that slot. Oh, and don't at me. I know that Ravenfrost has Can't Be Frozen. Please, we've all played the game. You can slam that as a mod, and it's also available on a ton of other things. Don't hit me with that. Hit power weapon is now also in a really good place. So not only is it going to be adding 55 to 80% ED, which is massive, this is actually bigger than old Bloodcraft values. And then on top of that, again, you're going to be able to get up to a maximum of 20 ignore target defense. These values are so good. You're going to be able to focus on more power and total survivability, as opposed to necessarily having to worry about chance to hit, because you're going to have so many sources of minus enemy defense, especially if you go down this tree and craft multiple items in it. The caster set is broken. No. The caster set is broken. Honestly, this is ridiculous. Senpai, please. I can only wear one piece in every slot. I don't know why you're making me choose between all these great crafts. Caster Helm has its mana steal increase from 2 to 5. That's actually pretty substantial on classes that need to use this as an alternative for mana leech. And then in addition to that, 10 to 20% faster cast rate on helms. And the barbarians and the druids in chat, please give me a oh yeah. God, that's so good. We've already gone over why it's absolutely bonkers, but again, plus the skills, huge faster cast rate, all of the mods that you typically see on a really good Druid Pelt or really good Barb Helm, and these are auto mods, people. Auto mods. Caster Boots just see a buff to their increased maximum mana, which is still pretty nice, but it's not the most exciting change. Caster Gloves now roll 10 FCR. Let me say that again. Caster Gloves now roll 10 FCR. We are going to be able to use something other than Mage Fist and Triangles on casters. That is amazing. This allows for some hybrid builds that need increased attack speed and also FCR. This just means that you're going to be able to craft really nice gloves with multiple resistances on them or other desirable stats like Magic Find, etc. and still get that 10 FCR piece. And also means that if you just haven't found one of those pieces early in the ladder, since it's a consistent value, you are just able to make these and then replace them later. Considering Mage Fist really said NFCR and some mana to builds that don't care about fire skills, any glove that you craft is going to be, for all intents and purposes, equal to, or if not better than, using something like a Mage Fist. This is huge. Caster belts are always going to roll 10% FCR. This is so good. There are so many times where you're low on crafting materials, you're trying to hit an FCR breakpoint, and you need that max roll on the belt, and you get screwed over with a 5, 6, or 7 roll. And now we are using clean numbers, and you're going to be able to more consistently hit those breakpoints, as opposed to having to quite literally gamble with the last of your money. Caster shields are also in a really good place. They now have 20 to 30% faster cast rate as a variable, and in addition to that, 10 to 20% block chance. Caster body armor. Now this is interesting. Not only has its mana per kill increased to a much more reasonable value, you are now going to be able to roll 20 to 30% faster cast rate on the armor. Now, I'm not saying that a piece like this is going to somehow replace some of the uniques or other endgame rune words that we're using, but being able to just make a piece of armor that says bare minimum 20% faster cast rate, especially with the stealth nerf, means that we're going to see a lot more power in the mid game. And I think a lot of the changes that we've seen throughout this developmental season preview is really targeted at bringing a bit more power into the mid game, because PD2, with the skill changes and how the power scale is typically lower until you get plus skill, has really driven us to the extreme of only looking at the late game. But that mid game push is going to be in such a healthier place, especially being able to just make an item like this, where you go, okay, now I've just hit 2 higher breakpoints, and I can use some of these other pieces that I was going to have to wait until I had something like a Spirit Shroud, or I had something like a Skin of the Viper Magi, or I was sitting on a really good rune word base. Caster amulets were too good, so they didn't change anything. Good choice, quite frankly. They were always the golden standard for the caster set, and now everything else kind of feels more in line with the same power level. Caster rings are definitely in a better place. They have a larger energy pool, and then in addition to that, they actually have mana per kill now, as opposed to regenerate mana. I already went over why caster weapons are actually so powerful that I don't understand how we got to this point, but just to go over it very quickly again, +1 all skills and 20 to 30% faster cast rate are now auto mods. Thank you, dev team. These are literally too good. There's a million reasons why they're too good. I actually intend to make a follow-up video once we have everything set in stone that goes over what are all of those chase bases that you're going to want to be using when you're really trying to chase those extremely powerful potential crafting possibilities. The safety set is another set where we saw a massive overhaul, and this is looking to bump up the total resistance, defense, and in addition to that, add percentile PDR to a lot of these pieces. They are really, really good. I really like the direction that they went with here. And in addition to that, it's really going to change up at least some of the mercenary gear that we're seeing, some of the hardcore viability gear that we were seeing, and I guess let's just get into them. And also the weapon change is huge. So Safety Helm is now going to have a doubling of the potential enhanced defense on it, as well as seeing the lightning resistance bump up to 10 to 20%, and then a 5 to 10% PDR roll. Really, really good changes. Huge PDR values here. And the resistances that are now available on them are in a much more noteworthy place, because previously rolling 5 to 10 was nice, but not really impactful enough to make any of these pieces really worth crafting. Safety boots increase to enhance defense, fire res gets doubled, and they have increased the flat magic reduction. Safety gloves, they have increased the flat magic reduction and also bumped up the resistance. Safety belt, same thing, they've bumped up the poison res and they have increased the magic damage reduction. Safety shield now can roll 10 to 20% physical damage reduction and also up to 60% ED. This is really nice. Making Baby's First Storm Shield is now much more viable, and means that we could be seeing Storm Shields with plus to skills. That sounds great to me. Safety body, again, a very similar change. So we've bumped up the ED potential 20 to 60%, and then in addition to that, added 10 to 20% PDR. This is really good because you're going to be able to just create mercenary armor and just fully outfit them and be able to rely on having maximum mercenary uptime for those builds that really see a huge power scale increase from being able to rely on their mercenary. Safety amulet is now always going to roll 10% chance of blocking, which is really nice. A lot of these pieces now have a lot of PvP potential, especially because Senpai and team have gone on record saying that they really want to invest a lot of energy and a lot of resources to creating a PvP community inside of PD2. And being able to create something like this consistently means that rolling for GG amulets is going to be a lot more viable once that is in the works. Safety rings now rolled the 5 to 10 vitality, really huge vitality value there, and also additional magic reduction. Safety weapons now only roll on bows and crossbows, and their ED value is 70 to 140. And in addition to that, they have 10 to 20% increased attack speed as auto mods. Crafting bows with 140 ED and 20 IAS as an auto mod. What? Considering on top of this, crossbows have seen a 50% increase in damage depending on the base that you're using, and also a flat 10% increased damage across the board, and a minus 10% enemy physical damage reduction, and then you can craft them? What are we doing here? That's actually bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers. I cannot wait to craft the bow that will finally unseat Windforce. I'm so super stoked for this. The changes to Blood are really aimed at making a lot of these values a lot more relevant, so I'm going to go through them very quickly. Bloodhelm now rolls 10 to 20% deadly strike and also 2 to 4 life stolen per hit, just a huge increase in those numbers, basically doubling each value. Blood boots are now going to see a big increase to replenish life. The lifesteal now rolls 2 to 4, which is a lot more relevant inside of the fact that you can't roll lifesteal on boots typically, so being able to roll a value as high as 4% is actually really big. Blood gloves also see an increase, 2 to 4% lifesteal as opposed to the 1 to 3%. Your blood belt now rolls 3 to 6% life stolen and can roll up to 20% chance to open wounds. This is a really big change, honestly, considering the previous max roll was 10%. Blood Shield, its lifesteal was increased 3 to 6%, a really big change there. And then in addition to that, 10 to 20% chance to block. I'm not exactly sure that you're going to be seeing a ton of Blood Shields unless you're putting it on somebody like a Paladin, but it's nice to see it in general. Or a melee Amazon, am I right? With the Javelin, am I right? Am I? I don't know. I don't play Amazon. Blood Body is both seeing an increase to lifesteal, so 3 to 6%, and is also now seeing 3 to 6 life after each kill, as opposed to life per demon kill, which is a huge change. Getting life per kill also means that you are going to be able to effectively life leech off of killing undead, which is really important considering it's so hard to stay alive on some melee builds when the targets that you're fighting don't allow you to life leech. Blood Amulet has its faster run block value bumped up to a static 10%, which is really significant. And then the lifesteal is actually being replaced with life per kill. Since blood rings were already in a really good place, what they just did was made it consistent with the other rings. This is also really big because being able to consistently roll 10 strength automod on a ring that is also definitely going to get you life and life leech is going to drastically increase the total pool of good rolls that we're going to see when crafting these. Blood weapons have seen an increase in their ED, and they are no longer the all-time consuming ruler of biggest ED. So 55 to 80% means that's in line with the other crafted weapons that we've seen, but it does now come with a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6 lifesteal. So it's potentially still going to be the best melee weapon craft, but considering we can get minus 10 to 20 enemy defense, I'm not necessarily sure that people are going to, without question, rely on blood weapons for their potential. And that's actually really good just because the Ort Rune, P Ruby are used in so many other crafting slots that having to dump all of them into making crafted blood weapons meant that your ability to craft other things was really stymied until you had amazing weapons. I'm actually pretty excited about this change. I'm not necessarily sure that it was intentional on the part of the dev team. With our most recent all crafted gear project, it's become incredibly apparent to me how difficult it is to maintain the economy of crafting materials when you know all of your orts, potentially all of your Ral runes, and also all of your rubies are going to be going into crafting the weapon piece of that. So I think this, while increasing the viability of blood-crafted weapons, is also going to change the total ecosystem or economy of crafting as it stands together, considering you're gonna want to be interchanging so many of these different pieces depending on what part of the game you're in and what chase items you're looking to get. All in all, it looks like the changes for PD2 are consistently looking at approaching and dealing with the issues that the community has raised, and in addition to that, what the overall image or the overall trajectory of the mod is as far as how the development team wants to handle it. And we're seeing a lot of power both being put into the early game, the mid game, and then the super late game, which just means we are organically increasing the overall play length, playability, enjoyability, and fulfillment that at least myself and the community could potentially get from continuing to play this mod. Let me know what you think. I'm really excited about these changes. The crafting has me so excited. I can't wait to sit down and come up with a list of all the great items that you're going to be able to build so that people have a better idea of what to expect. Let me know what you're excited about crafting, if you think these changes are enough, if you think these changes have gone too far. I know some of them are actually pretty groundbreaking. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing, commenting below, giving a like to the video, and I hope to see you all in the next video.